Hello, friends, and welcome to the October 31st, Happy Halloween, edition of Rant-Om Thoughts, where sacred cows are grilled and killed for your lunching and munching pleasure. Well, posted something positive on Facebook about Columbus Day, and I get mobbed. Not by left wingers. Well, maybe they are left wingers, but but from people who purport to be libertarians. But again, they forget history. They tear down the great men that came before us because they think they're being sophisticated and above it all. And they had to be particularly nasty with me about it. And well, here's the thing: I have zero tolerance when it comes to getting trolled. When you get obnoxious with me, I just block you and be done with it, and I delete your comments as well. You see, my block button, that's my bouncer. My social media platforms, those are my nightclubs. I own 3 of them: Facebook, Twitter, and MeWe. And if you get obnoxious with me, I summon my 7-foot-tall, 400-pound bouncer, and he'll toss you over his shoulder like a sack of potatoes and power slam you on the sidewalk outside. And then there's the delete key. Well, that's the cleaning lady. She shows up at around 3 a.m. to wash the piss you leave on my floor and the feces you smear on my walls. I gotta close the window. I don't like background noises. Barking dogs and neighbors arguing. All right. A little over a week ago, I on all my platforms, I posted an Ask Me Anything update. As a status. I did that on Facebook, Twitter, and MeWe. Had to do it twice because the first day I wasn't really getting a whole lot of responses. But I have 7 questions that have been asked of me that I will answer. All right. Daniel from Oakland, California asks, totally random question, but hey, you asked for it. Where can I find an archive of old Pacific Bell Yellow Pages for Sonoma County from the late 90s? Well, I don't know. My first guess would be the Sonoma County Public Library System. And of course, there's always search engines on the internet. There's Google, Bing, there's DuckDuckGo, Excite, Ask Jeeves. Is Ask Jeeves still a thing? Maybe I should Google that. Matthew from Anaheim asks, how did you become a libertarian? Well, there's no Reader's Digest version of the story because I can't really pin it down to a single event or influence. Airplane. But I can't really pin it down to a single event or influence. I was bullied a lot as a child, so that from that sprung a desire to just want to be left alone, to not be bothered by anyone, to want to just live my life in quiet dignity without fear of harassment from anyone or anything. And of course, the school system being what it is, they would always side with the bullies and would only intervene on their behalf and punish me if I dared to fight back. And that taught me at a very early age that the system is not on my side. I became aware of the Libertarian Party in 1992. I remember seeing footage of Andre Moreau being arrested at one of the debates and complaining in an interview about Ross Perot's inclusion in the debates when his party, the Libertarian Party, and the Green Party were being excluded. And I remember Harry Brown and his runs in 96 and 2000 and being very impressed with him. Even though in 96 I still voted for Bob Dole, and in 2000 I voted for Howard Phillips. I first read economics in one lesson in college. That was my introduction to the Austrian school. It was around this time I became aware of a congressman by the name of Ron Paul. And being amazed at this man who is saying all the right things and doing all the right things was scorned by the Republican Party leadership. That both Bushes, both George and George W. Bush, campaigned against him, as did Newt Gingrich, supporting his opponents in primaries. There was even one year that the National Rifle Association, Negotiating Rights Away, endorsed a Democrat candidate that was running against Ron Paul for Congress. From my late teens throughout most of my 20s, that would be, say, 95 to around 2008, I considered myself a conservative or a paleo-conservative. Then 1928 to 2015, I kind of alternated between paleo-conservative and paleo-libertarian, or sometimes I would call myself a minarchist. But by 2016, 2017, I had to kind of drop the whole paleo thing because I got sick and tired of being lumped together with these man children in their Hitler Youth haircuts and polo shirts and tiki torches, because I had nothing to do with that crowd, and I still don't want anything to do with that crowd. And as for conservatives, I mean, what are conservatives conserving these days? Oh, the progressivism of 20 years ago. That's what they're conserving. And in 20 years, they'll be touting drag schools. They'll be touting drag queen story hour at the public library, transgenderism, and crazy unpronounceable pronouns as traditional family values. So I won't bother to correct you if you accuse me of being a conservative, but I honestly don't see myself as one anymore. Excuse me, I gotta pause the video. Wizard's being a brat. And from 95 up to 2012, I was a registered Republican, even though I voted for Constitution Party presidential candidates in 2000, 2004, 2008, and 2012. 2012, with the nomination of Mitt Romney, I left the Republican Party because I simply could not bring myself to vote for him. So I bolted the Republican Party, registered as an American Independent, tried to do what I could to get the Constitution Party organized here in California. Then, when Rand Paul declared, I temporarily rejoined the Republican Party so I could help him out in the primaries. And we all know what happened with that. So with the nomination of Donald Trump, I walked away from the dumpster fire that was the Republican Party. And for a while, I tried to help with what little I could, with what little there was of the Constitution Party in the state. The problem was, and all you got to do is go to AmericanThirdPartyReport.com, type in the search keywords Constitution Party, and it chronicles right there the collapse, the implosion of the Constitution Party. There are state affiliates leaving the Constitution Party. And there are some affiliates like Illinois, which not only disaffiliated from the Constitution Party's national organization, I mean, they dissolved, they disbanded. And in large part because their leaders were a bunch of cowardly sellouts who were in the tank for Trump. Fast forward to 2017, 2018, I start hearing about the Mises Caucus. Which was founded in response to then LNC chair Nick Sarwark attacking Ron Paul, attacking Judge Napolitano, attacking Tom Woods, attacking anyone who was associated with the Mises Institute. So they started the Mises Caucus, and I looked into it and thought, you know what, this looks like a worthwhile thing to be involved with. So I changed my registration to libertarian. Within a year after that, I took out a paid membership. Then I wound up becoming a coordinator on the California team. 2021, I became chairman of the Stanislaus County affiliate of the Libertarian Party. And the title officially is chairman pro tem. Once we get large enough and we're able to hold quorum meetings, there will be elections, and I will stand for re-election because I still have some ideas that I want to put into action to help grow the party and to help build an infrastructure here in this part of the valley. But yeah, that's how I came to be a small L libertarian and a big L libertarian. Now we've got 5 more questions. Rachel from Modesto. How are you able to read so many books plus maintain your reading online? Like, what's your actual reading schedule? Okay. This is the stack of books I'm reading right now. What I do is I read them in tandem. So I'll spend some time reading a chapter of this book, this book, this book, this book, this book, and this book. I try to get a diversity of topics. Sometimes I try to throw fiction in there. Funnily enough, now that I bring this up, there is some debate as to whether or not Castaneda his work is fiction or not. Whether or not Don Juan Matus was a real person. Still, fiction or not, just saying, that mix of Indian mysticism with ritualistic drug use, it's a pretty dangerous combination, and I don't recommend you trying that at home. I also read periodicals. I have subscriptions to the Austrian, which is the house organ of the Mises Institute, the New American, which is which used to be a respectable old right publication, but seriously, they need to pull their heads out of Trump's butt. Knock it off with that whole stolen election narrative. The parent organization was founded by a great man by the name of Robert Welch, and he would be really, really embarrassed to see that the New American beclown themselves with tabloid fodder based on the My Pillow guy's crackhead delusions. Moving on, National Review, which is the flagship publication of neoconservatism in America. The New Republic, which is the flagship publication of establishmentarian liberalism in America. Mother Jones, which is a hard left publication. And I also read Reason, which is a libertarian publication. Why do I read? And of course, I read the Modesto Bee. The Bee being historically it's been a New Deal Democrat publication because that's when it was founded. And historically it was very moderate. But with Trump, with the Trump years and later COVID, it took a very hard port turn. Still, it's the only source of information on local news. The Sacramento news stations, they only come down here if someone gets shot. But as I was saying, why do I read publications that I don't agree with? Well, I don't read to confirm my biases. I read to educate myself. Also, by reading the New Republic and Mother Jones, it helps me to learn the language of the other side. Then I would know what they're really saying when they say X, Y, or Z. And if I learn how to speak their language, I can argue with them in their language, and boy, they don't like it when you do that. No. Now, that's how I read the printed word. As for my online reading, I try to limit my reading time to 4 hours. Keyword is try. Sometimes I'll come across a video or a podcast that I get really engrossed in and I lose track of time. All right. Who are your heroes, and do you specifically have anyone you know or knew in real life? Well, let's see. Outside of politics, I tend to like the explorers. People like Christopher Columbus, and Hernando Cortez. the pioneers who tamed the American West. Men like Lewis and Clark. I also have a ton of respect for the pioneers of aviation. Lindbergh, Chuck Yeager, the astronauts. These were brave men who literally put their lives on the line for the discovery of the unknown. In politics, well, of course, you have the founders, the Civil War heroes. There were great men on both sides. On the Confederate side, you of course had Robert E. Lee, Stonewall Jackson, Patrick Cleburne, just to name a few. On the Union side, you had guys like Joshua Chamberlain and George Custer. 20th century heroes. You got your. I tend to. I tend to go for the great conservatives of the 20th century. Back when conservatism still meant something. Men like Barry Goldwater, Robert Taft. Thinkers like Rothbard, Ludwig von Mises, Russell Kirk. Reagan was the best president in my lifetime, though far from perfect. He was a damn sight better than what came after him. In real life, two immediately come out. There was Bill Conrad. He ran for Congress in 96 and 02. Ran for assembly a number of times. He served on the city council. I worked on his campaigns in the 90s and in the thousands. And a lot of what I know about character and leadership comes from him. Another man that I know in real life that I would consider a hero is John Katz. He was a radio personality who was active in the 70s, 80s, 90s, up to his retirement in the early thousands. I would spend time with him at his house when I was attending college. We would have these long conversations that would go on to the wee hours of the morning. And I learned one of the best conversations I ever had with him was on property rights and eminent domain. And this was at the same time I was following the Vera Koking case, which is very important because if it weren't for that, and if it weren't for those conversations on property rights with John Katz, I probably would have been taken in by that con artist Trump and that whole myth of him being the right populist superhero. Right populist superheroes don't run little old ladies out of their houses or try to have the government do that for them just so he can build a special garage for his limos. All right, there are two other questions. I'm going to answer them in reverse order because one of them reads like it could be a follow-up to the other. All right. Can you share your Christian testimony? How did you come to know the living God? All right. Here is what I believe. Whether you go to heaven or hell depends on how you answer this question. Do you know where you are going? And do you know why you are going there? The right answer is heaven. And the answer as to why you are going there is because Jesus Christ shed his blood on the cross at Calvary. And with that precious blood, he ransomed your soul from the fires and eternal torments of hell. I know where I'm going. I know why I am going there. And how I know and how I can say all that with such confidence is because it's in this book. My parents were lapsed Pentecostals. I mean, they were raised in that faith tradition, but had not attended church regularly for most of their adult lives. I'm not sure about my father, but my mother was still a believer. My grandmother would try to take us to Sunday school. This would be off and on in our childhood and in our teens. But I had struggled a lot with the prosperity gospel, the health and wealth theology that was in vogue in American Pentecostalism at that time. You know, I would hear that if you were faithful, you would be blessed. But all the time, I would see people who were just, you know, they would just have tragedy upon tragedy piled upon them, yet they were still faithful. And I had a very hard time wrapping my head around that. Another problem with Pentecostalism was that I wasn't feeling the experience. I wasn't getting slain in the spirit. I wasn't speaking in tongues. And I was made to feel like less of a Christian for it. And that caused me to doubt my salvation as a young man. There was a fundamentalist preacher by the name of John Stormer who, in the mid-'60s, wrote a book titled None Dare Call It Treason, who I had tried to invite to MJC as a speaker. And we corresponded briefly. And he set me straight about a lot of things. And you know, so I eventually wound up attending an independent fundamental Baptist church, which had sounder theology than what was being taught in Pentecostal churches. And I did the altar call. They said the sinner's prayer, and that's my salvation story right there. I attended that church faithfully for 6 years, 2001 to around 2007 or so. Actually, 2006, and I'll get to why I stopped going there. See, from 2003 through 2005, it was a rough time for that church. It was a storefront church. It was small. It was just getting started, and we had one pastor after another resigning. And then we finally took on this young pastor who was fresh out of seminary. He was actually a year older than I was. At that time, I was 28. He was 29. So I thought it would be kind of neat to have a pastor who was, pretty close to me in age. And right away, there were changes taking place that I just didn't, feel right with. And first, he had the name of the church changed from Liberty Baptist Church to Anchor Baptist Church. Simply because he wanted to be a founding pastor. I mean, there was an older couple in the congregation who persuaded me that the name change wasn't a big deal as long as the mission of the church, which is the saving of souls, remained the same. So I begrudgingly went along with it. Then he started micromanaging. If you wound up missing a service, not just the Sunday service, Sunday morning service, but also the Sunday evening service and the midweek service, he would call people and kind of harp on them about it. He even did that to me, and that started bothering me, and started making unreasonable personal demands on people that just didn't really sit right. There was this teaching that he gave in Sunday school about marriage and divorce, and I asked him about physical cruelty. Would that be an acceptable reason for a woman to leave her husband? And he just, couldn't give me a straight answer on that. So, so that really bothered me. Another thing that this new pastor, is that he would use the pulpit as a cheerleading platform for a corrupt president and an unjust war. And I am referring to George W. Bush and the war in Iraq. And there would be times he would go so far as to mangle select verses from Romans 13 to support his view that George W. Bush was anointed by God to be America's ruler, and that we must obey the will of George W. Bush as we would the will of God. The last straw was the 2006 Veterans Day patriotic slideshow. Patriotic. And one of the slides included a painting of George W. Bush kneeling in prayer as the specters of Abraham Lincoln and George Washington laid their hands on him. I picked up my Bible, got up out of that pew, walked out that door, and did not look back. For the next few years, I home churched. I, followed devotionals. I would listen to Christian radio, at least the radio programs that I could stomach. The thing about Christian radio is that solid preaching is very rare on those stations. And if there is, they don't last very long, because sooner or later, they'll take aim at a popular celebrity preacher like, Rick Warren or, Joyce Meyer, and that's it. They're off the air because a bunch of people wrote in and complained. Well, there was this program that I started listening to in 2008. It was the Lutheran Hour, and the host, or speaker as they're called, was Pastor Ken Klaus. And I became very impressed with his preaching, so much so that I wanted to hear more preaching like it. So I looked it up. The Lutheran Hour was supported by the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod and the local Missouri Synod congregation over there on Orangeburg Avenue, Grace Lutheran. I started attending that. The style of worship was, it took some getting used to. I mean, it was very stiff and formal. But But as I attended services and Bible studies, and eventually became a member, and I dove deeper into the theology, and the theology just made a lot of sense to me. So that was how I found the Lutheran Church, which was the follow-up question. What led me to the Lutheran Church? So it was Ken Claus, the Lutheran Hour. Also, there were a couple of men that I had always admired who were Lutheran pastors. Richard Wurmbrand, who wrote Tortured for Christ, and Dietrich Bonhoeffer, who was executed because he was involved in a plot to assassinate Hitler. All right. The final question. I know you've made a lot of improvements in the past few years. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? Well, I'll probably still be working in security. If barring any circumstance that's beyond my control, I'd like to make a career out of that. Then still be working I'd still be working with the Libertarian Party, whether I'm still chairman or not. And yeah, I'd still be doing security, barring any unforeseen, any uncontrollable circumstances. I mean, there are some things coming down the pipeline, like Biden's vaccine mandate. That worry me. But we'll just cross that bridge when we get there. And as for my work in the LP, I'm going to continue working in that. I see a lot of good things coming down the pipeline in the future of the LP. I'm going to support Angela McArdle's candidacy for chair. I'm going to keep working with the other chairs in the Valley to build a Libertarian Party infrastructure. You've got Marjorie Langdon over in the Tuolumne area who's doing good stuff. Michael Noguera down in Merced, he's really kicking butt with his affiliate down there. Ben Weir in Sacramento, who I interviewed. He's the one that organized that anti-war demonstration. He has this ambitious goal of co-opting the State of Jefferson project and turning it into a libertarian enterprise. And that's something I'm looking forward to being a part of. So that's, where I see myself, or at least hope to be in 5 years. I wish I could say that marriage and family are in the cards, but I've made my peace with the possibility that that's just not going to happen. Okay. Before I go, little product review. This is Therabreath Healthy Gums Oral Rinse. It also helps fight halitosis, and it's formulated to, treat gum disease. And I could actually feel my gums strengthening, and I think they might even be regenerating. Also, it does something with my taste buds, which is interesting. I can actually taste the honey in Arizona green tea now. Yeah, wild. So, wow, 50 minutes. Anyway, I hope that answered everyone's questions satisfactorily. If you have any more questions, feel free to leave them in the comments below. Till next time, think while it's still legal. Reopen America. Angela for chair. All right. Signing off.